Alright, gang, here we go with Unit 2. This unit covers Mesopotamia, which is we're looking at this map here, or this graphic here, the Tigris, Euphrates on top, and then the Euphrates River on the bottom. Okay, so this is the area that we're going to be talking about for the next week and a half or so. So let's jump right into it. River valleys. The important thing you remember about river valleys is they provided rich soils for agriculture. Okay, that's water was vital to irrigation, growing crops, sustaining civilization. And these were often located in places that could offer protection from nomadic invaders. Okay, so you had usually a river valley has mountains on the sides, and sometimes those mountains are very difficult to pass through or to bring an invading army into, take over your territory. As you can see here. Alright, the Fertile Crescent was an arc of land between the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea in southwest Asia. Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers, which are the Tigris and Euphrates, which you can see here. Easy way to remember them is Tigris is on top, Tigris on top of the Euphrates. Both rivers flooded once a year and left a thick bed of silt. Okay, and here's another map you can see here. This is the crescent shaped here, little crescent. And silt is rich in nutrients, and new farmers could plant and harvest enormous quantities of wheat and barley. So it's nutrient-rich soil that allowed farmers to, grow healthy crops on a regular, consistent basis. Alright, political patterns. Now, Mesopotamia contained lots of civilizations. A lot of war took place where one civilization is trying to take over the other. So we're going to talk about this is just the general overall patterns that existed in these civilizations, and we'll talk about some specific ones later coming up. So political patterns. Sumer, or Mesopotamia's earliest governments, were controlled by temple priests, and farmers believed that they needed blessings for the success of their crops. So if you were a priest, you had a lot of power over the people in your civilization. Priests were the middlemen for the gods, and priests demanded a portion of farmers' crops as tax. So we don't have money yet, so people are paying in different ways, usually with some type of product or good or resource. And you also had hereditary rulers. They would take over, and that's basically where power is passed down from one family member to another. Like a king, when he dies, his son, who's the prince at the time, takes over, and then he becomes king. Then he wants to have a son, so that hereditary power stays within the family. Economic patterns, okay? We're shifting away from bone, stone, and wood weapons and tools to metal tools and weapons, specifically bronze and iron, which you can see here. All right, bronze tools and weapons came first, and then iron, Bronze Age, Iron Age. You also had increasing agricultural surplus, which came from better tools, plows, or the use of the plow, and irrigation. Okay, and people also traded along rivers, and the civilization of Mesopotamia also allowed them to trade with Egypt. Okay, so they increasing trade along rivers, and they also traded with Egypt. You also had the development of the world's first cities during this time, which again, a city has a lot of people and is a center of trade. Trade is an economic activity. And you also had specialization of labor. Religion. Pretty much everybody at this time, and we'll talk about the lone exception here shortly, was polytheistic, which is the belief in many gods. Sometimes you might have as many gods as 3,000 or more. Okay, gods could be angered at any moment. All right, so you always had to please them. All right, they built these impressive ziggurats or temples to sacrifice food, wine, and animals to honor the gods and keep them happy. So if your city got flooded and wiped out your crops, the gods were angry. If you went through a drought, the gods were angry. If people were sick and dying, the gods were angry. Keep the gods happy. And here's a ziggurat here. You can see that this gentleman here is sitting up there. So they kind of look like similar to a pyramid. All right. Sumerian society was also divided into a rigid class system, which is no shocker. Usually your priests and kings were up at the top. Your slaves, your poor workers, your farmers down here, your artisans, scribes, perhaps some of your other religious figures were kind of in this top tier. Intellectual achievements, okay? They developed a system of writing, which you can see here, and you'll see a better picture coming up here in a second, and that is called cuneiform, C-U-N-E-I-F-O-R-M, cuneiform. Some people say cuneiform. And also one of the world's first stories, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the earliest works of literature in the world. And it was basically a book of long poems of myths and legends about this guy named Gilgamesh, trying to find his way in the world, taking on different challenges, prove himself, be legendary, etc. Okay, here is cuneiform. Right.
Good afternoon. At this time, all.
Okay, so cuneiform was a series of marks, usually written in clay tablets with a wooden stylus. Okay, and this is how they wrote down their records. Usually business transactions, like if you traded, religious traditions, things of that nature. Here's a portion of Gilgamesh, and this is what a book, if you went to Barnes and Nobles, this is what it might look like, the cover. Gilgamesh, whither are you wandering? Life which you look for, you will never find. For when the gods created man, they let death be his share and withheld life in their own hands. Other developments, we had the plow, which definitely helped make irrigation, farming easier. The wheel, okay, this is what one of the first wheels looked like, nothing fancy. Using bronze for metal, first use of bronze, which was a metal. And then you have irrigation, okay, which again was critical for rivers to provide that water flow to the crop fields so that they could have a stable, renewable food source. All right, and that's it for this part of the notes. If you have any questions, write them down. Anything you want me to go over, make a note of it in your questions box. Make sure you do your summary as well. All right, and the key points, advantages of river valleys, know your patterns, your social, religious, economic, political, etc., and cuneiform, or the first written language, or one of the first written languages. So finish up your notes, get those questions done if you have any, write them down, and get that summary, and I will see you guys next class. Later.